Today, that's for you, Stigler, I'm continuing my series, Kilroy's Key 3, and I'm doing this series at the end of the year, so what I'm focusing on are games that are new to me. So one of the qualifications are that I either bought this game or bought it and played it, or played it for the first time in 2022. So it's new to me in 2022. Today's topic is the American Civil War. And as part of this series, I'm taking the top 3 games in my collection. That's another limitation. It's got to be something that I own and play. And I was kind of anxious about this one because there's some really good stuff that came out in the American Civil War space. So I was really wanting to get to this, but I was also a little apprehensive about it because I barely got all this stuff back in each one of their respective boxes. These are the games that I'm going to talk about today. Really pack a punch. There's a lot of content in those boxes, and I really hate pulling them out and putting them back in, which we'll get to. That will probably factor into the value section. So what do I mean by value? Well, in this series, I address, I'm going to look at a lot of things, but one of the driving or key elements that I'm kind of looking at is my point of view. P for presentation, O for operation, and V for value. And I'll put a link to my introduction to this whole series that explains a little bit more about what my point of view is. But these games are pretty cool. And I mean, anybody who's has any interest in the American Civil War or wargaming it can do really probably couldn't do better than look at these games. These are a treat. So the first one that I want to talk about is, or put on the table at least, is the U.S. Civil War. Now, this was not originally released in 2022, but this was the 3rd edition, 2nd printing. I missed out the first few editions of this. I have the Civil War, the classic Victory Games version. I have For the People. I have a whole host of strategic level Civil War games, but this is one that I kind of missed out on, and so I picked this one up and wanted to get to this one this year. And that's from GMT and game designed by Mark Simonich. The next one that comes into the top 3 is Into the Woods. This is the original series is designed by Richard Berg. This one was the focus of Into the Woods was by Dick Whitaker. And this is again published by GMT, and this is part of the Great Battles of the American Civil War, which is a very robust tactical series dealing with the great battles of the American Civil War. Imagine that. And I think you all might just guess what the third one that breaks into the top 3 for me, and that is A Most Fearful Sacrifice. This is a Herman Ledman design. It is published by Flying Pig Games, and this is a culmination of a lot of games from Herman Ledman. In his he's like the Blind Sword series. This I think is the Black Swan, and he's got several in this kind of series that has activation, either chits, in this case cards, that allow for activations. But these are really good games. I mean, we have strategic, we have a whole series of battles in a box, and then we have a focus on one battle. Of course, it's Gettysburg. It's for some Civil War buffs, it is the battle, right? And so at least it's probably the most gamed battle. And this is arguably, again, this is my opinion, but this is arguably, now into the discussion as one of the, one of the top, if not the top, top 3, top 5, top of Gettysburg games. I mean, this is a really good system. So there you have it. Those are the top 3. These are the ones I'm going to look at. Let's talk about my point of view. In order to talk about my point of view, we got to get out my chest of keys, right? There we go. One of the viewers, I think it was Robert Moffat, was saying he thought I got this from there's a bourbon that gives you a key with it. I want to tell you, I did not get all these keys from bottles of bourbon. And if I did, I'm not telling you anyway. So anyway, so I got to get my keys out. So point of view. So what's the P stand for? It stands for presentation. So let's talk about presentation of these 3 games. And the presentation of these 3 games is excellent. It's stellar, right? Let's clear out the board a little bit, or the table a little bit, so we can actually look at some of the presentation here. And presentation includes, the map, which is what I'm really going to kind of focus on here, but it includes the map, it includes counters, it includes player aids, it might even include the box cover art. I mean, it's just the overall presentation and feel of the game. This is one of the maps. There's several maps in Into the Woods, and this is one of them, and this is dealing with the Battle of Shiloh. And as you can see here, one of the key aspects of this series, or this segment of the series of Into the Woods, is, I guess you might be able to guess it by its name, there's a lot of woods. So there's some new rules in this aspect of the series that talks about combat in woods. I mean, and the normal rules for it, there's a lot more limitations on combat through woods or blocking terrain and stuff like that. This one opens that up a little bit more, because all these battles are in heavily wooded areas, and so they had to deal with it a little bit different in this treatment. But this is a typical map in that series as far as how it portrays stuff. And I mean, you see it's very nice. It's very functional. I like the artwork on it. I like how the different terrain is displayed. You have a terrain key here. You've got some charts up there. You have the Tennessee River over here. So, I mean, this is very nice. And I like this. And these come in paper maps. And, you kind of probably want to have these come in paper maps, because there's several battles in this box. In the Into the Woods game, there's a lot of battles in there. And if they're all mounted, we need a bigger boat. You need a bigger box. And it probably might increase the cost dramatically to produce it and to ship it and all that other fun stuff. So this is nice. I like these maps, but it's kind of in some respects, I mean, again, this is beauty in the eye of the beholder. It kind of pales in comparison to this beautiful map here. This is only one of them. This is in A Most Fearful Sacrifice. These are mounted maps, and there's 2 of these that come in the box. This is just part of it, and I can't even get it all on the whole screen there. But this is a Rick Barber map. In fact, this is one of his last maps. I think this got sent off to printer or production or final edit right before he passed away. So, and he has a very unique design, he had a signature look to his maps. In fact, I did a kind of a memorial on him on his passing, so I'll put a link to that in here as well, because it shows some of his other artwork over the years. And so this is truly something to behold. You have big round top here, just to give you a point of reference. You have little round top here, but there's 2 sides. So all the top part of the fish hook in Gettysburg proper is on the other map, and it would be north of here. So beautiful map. Some people don't like this art style and might think it's a little bit cluttered and what. That's fine. Everybody can have their own opinion, but I think this is a masterpiece in my opinion. So that is the map for A Most Fearful Sacrifice, which is going to give it quite a few points on the presentation scale in my book. Then you've got the map for the U.S. Civil War, and it's 2 pieces here. As you can see here, you got to put these 2 pieces together. And it's a nice map. I mean, it's mounted. I like it better than the Civil War, which was kind of was like 2 pieces or 3 pieces. I mean, Texas, if you did the Western Theater, was kind of had a foot hanging out there or something. It was a little different, especially when I started playing war games back in the 80s. I mean, that was a weird map for me to look at. But I think this does fine. I mean, you've got the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachians, and you've got it's a hex map. It's very clear, clean. I mean, this is very typical of a Simonich design in any of his games. Is there's usually somewhat of a very efficient and effective and clean type look to the map, so that you have just enough information to do what you need to do, but yet it still conveys what you need to convey. So, but I mean, this overall, though, I mean, the map in Most Fearful Sacrifice is probably gonna beat that one out if you couldn't guess. So, let's get back to the whole presentation here, and talking about these 3 games on presentation, and start giving out some keys, right? So on presentation, I think, I probably, already tipped showed my hand on that one, but I'm gonna give 3 keys to A Most Fearful Sacrifice on its map. The second map, I mean, I'm gonna give 2 keys to Into the Woods on this map, because there's a whole collection of maps in there. I think they're very nice and very functional. They actually have a little bit more color and art than this map. Again, different scales, and so it's kind of hard to compare that, but that's what I do in these videos. I compare the uncomparable. So that leaves 1 key for the U.S. Civil War. So let's get into the rules now. Now the rules for these 2 are heavier than the ones for Most Fearful Sacrifice. Let me just get that out of the way. The rule book for American Civil War is not, this isn't the most complicated game, but there's a lot going on here. Anytime you get to the strategic level, at least I find, you're going to get quite a bit of complexity, because you're trying to add in a lot of stuff on the macro scale, right? There's a lot of other things you're trying to cover in with logistics and supply, and possibly, politics, and this one has a whole separate rule for naval, so or a whole separate rule set for naval. So there's a lot going on in a strategic level game. As far as the that goes with this. Here's the U.S. Civil War rules. The Great Battle rules, well, this is a series of rules, right? Now, this one does add some new wrinkles to the series and how it deals with woods. But this is generally, one thing I do like about series is that you don't have to learn a new game every time you pick it up. Now, these rules are thick enough that you are kind of learning a new game every time you pick up, if you don't play this very often. But if you do play these on somewhat of a regular basis, or are very familiar with this, then this is I like series rules, because they're easier to pick up, because there's a lot of familiarity there, and so you can just get right into it. The rules for A Most Fearful Sacrifice, it's a different kind of system. It has the activation system. It's got, I should have showed this in the presentation, but, it's got these cards that you use to do activations, and that this simulates the command structure, and it's going to be different for different scenarios. And then, of course, you can play the whole 3-day battle. It's a little different, but if you're familiar with his blind swords, black swans, whatever the different systems are called, then there's a lot of similarities in those. Those almost become akin to a series type situation. So in that regard, I'm going to go with, as far as the accessibility of the rules and getting into it, I'm going to go with 3 for A Most Fearful Sacrifice. I'm going to go with 2 for Into the Woods. And then I'm going to go with 1 for U.S. Civil War. I mean, that's a close one, because, I mean, this rule book is not that complicated compared to the American Civil War, but I think that for the investment, this one, you invest in the rules, you're going to be able to play several scenarios and actually go into different games. This one is just for this game area. So anyway, so that's what I'm going with. I'm going to stick with that for now. Now we get into the value, and this is more of an interesting take here, and this is what I was talking about at the beginning. Picking up and putting down and putting all this together is a chore. Each one of these games can kind of be that way. War games in general kind of tend to be that way. But this one's especially because it's so massive, it's so big. Now you can just play the scenarios, and I've played some of the scenarios, but the big game is kind of the real punch here, trying to get the full feel of it. So in that regard, I don't get this to the table as much. And so my value on this one is going to be a 1, even though this might be the definitive game. I mean, that's an argument for another day, but this might be the definitive game on Gettysburg. It's in the discussion, at least, right? But I just don't get to the table enough. So that's where I'm giving that a 1. The U.S. Civil War is going to get the 2 because, again, that suffers from it suffers from its size, right? Because it's a massive undertaking. This is a big game. There's a lot going on in it, and so you've got to invest some time to get that out on the table and find the right opponent. I mean, you can play this solitaire or two-handed, but to play it opposed, takes a little bit more planning and scheduling for that regard. So that leaves Into the Woods with with the 3 keys, because I think the modular nature of this, with the multiple battles and the fact that you've got a series rules that you can get in and get out of, makes this a little bit more accessible and able to get to the table a little bit more often. So I think there's just a little bit more value there, and plus the investment you have here can translate into the rest of the series. There's a lot of good games in this series. You can cover a lot of different battles of the American Civil War with this series, and so I just think there's a little bit more value there. So where does that leave us then? So that leaves us with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keys for Into the Woods, 1, 2, 3, 4 keys for the U.S. Civil War, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 keys for A Most Fearful Sacrifice. That's going to top out the list. Big surprise there, right? The presentation really pushed this a lot over the edge, and I could have showed you, I didn't show you all the components and the counters and everything, and the counters for these are fine as well. This is somewhat of a standard set in this series, and it's very nice. I mean, they do make changes over time, but it's very good, counters, very legible, understandable, makes sense, and conveys the information you want. But there's individual artwork on each of the counters that are in A Most Fearful Sacrifice, and I have everything bagged separately because you cannot fit a counter tray back in this box, so I had to bag everything, and I had to bag it in smaller bags so I could at least and break it down the units so that I could fit everything back in the box. It barely fits in the box anyway. All 3 of these games are that way, but as I said, I just don't get to this at the table. This one is a kind of a big lift, right? And I have to be in the mood. I mean, this one, I got to be in the mood for, strategic Civil War. I got to have the time and the interest to do it. This one, I got to be in the mood for a big Gettysburg. Because to do the scenarios are fine, but to do the scenarios takes a lot of time for me to break this out and pull this out. And if I'm going to do that, I might as well do something really big. And so I tend to push that off a little bit more. Where this, I can, again, take some time, because this is not an easy game or the most accessible of games, but it is easier to get to the table once you've got a handle on the rules. So that's what I have for you today. Love to know your thoughts. What is your point of view on these 3 games, or on what was new to you for 2022 in the American Civil War space? Love to hear it. Love to have comments. Love to know what you think about this series. I thought I'd start off with New2Me in 2022 as kind of a year-in type situation. I don't know if I'm going to get through all the one list I'd like to get to before the end of the year, and I might carry over into 2023 on that. But I might continue the series into the true essence. What are the top 3 in my collection, not just what's something that I've played in 2022 or new to me in 2022. So love to know your thoughts on how this was going, or what you think about that. Or I wish I'd known I could have got the keys from Bourbon. Then I probably could have killed 2 birds with 1 stone, or created some more gallstones, or anyway, kidney stones. I've had that. All right, so there you have it. Thank you so much for stopping by. I mean, I really do mean that. I'm amazed sometimes that anybody listens to me. So I really do appreciate that. I hope you're having a happy and safe holiday season and spending some time with family and friends, and hopefully getting some games to the table. I'm not getting as many games to the table because I'm doing these videos, but I am going to get some more games to the table. Maybe not as many war games as my family type games, but you got to do what you got to do. Thanks for stopping by. Take care. Thanks for watching.